Welcome to our Supporting Virtual Learning for EL Students webinar today. I want to welcome Laura Schreiber, who is a colleague and friend from Baltimore, actually, where she is an ESOL educator. And she's done some work for us before, and she's a fabulous person and has some great things to share today. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me.
So you want to forward the slide?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Okay. So just some things to let you know about navigating today. There is a control panel that you all have. You are all on mute because there's just too many people. But at the end, if you raise your hand with the little hand icon, then we can unmute you towards the end, and you're more than welcome to talk to the group and ask questions. But I would encourage you throughout this webinar, there's a questions place where if you write in questions, my sole responsibility while Laura's speaking is to monitor your questions and ask them during the webinar, because I'm sure a lot of other people have the same questions that you are having.
Absolutely.
Similarly, if you're having any trouble hearing us, write in. I will tell you that if you are having trouble hearing us, there is an option to call in on your phone. When you go to audio in your control panel, right, there is a place where it says phone or computer. If you click the radio dial for phone, you'll get the call-in number, the PIN, the meeting ID, and all of that, and you can go ahead and do that. Okay. So, and hopefully Mike at some point in the next few minutes will copy that information into and send it to everybody in the chat or in the questions. So there's a chat at the bottom too, which allows you to chat with us, which I'm going to open now to make sure nobody's chatting with us.
Chat.
There is the chat. And also in the chat, there's a little message from us that welcomes you to the webinar and empathizes with you.
Mm-hmm.
So with all the work that you're doing, and it's just basically here to cheer you on. So, and thank you for your patience today. I have no audio.
Yes.
Okay, so a couple people, one person has written in and said she has no audio. I would suggest that you go ahead and go to the audio drop down and choose phone, and then follow the prompts. So the other thing I just want to make sure that we do is, thank you, sorry. Thank you to the New Hampshire Department of Ed, which has made all of these webinars possible. So I'm thrilled, we are all thrilled to demonstrate success to have that for you. So thank you to Caitlin Davis at the New Hampshire Department of Education. And thank you to all of you, because you've been very dedicated to your students this week. I've facilitated no less than 10 webinars this week.
Wow.
So I have spoken with hundreds of educators. I'm so impressed with the risk-taking that everyone's doing, and the hard work and the humor that people are maintaining, and just your dedication overall. So thank you very much for all your work this week. So I'm going to hand it over to Laura.
Awesome. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for attending this webinar. It's amazing that we're all in this together, and I really want to thank Demonstrated Success and New Hampshire Public Schools for welcoming so many amazing educators and being just as innovative as we all are during this crazy time. Just a little bit about me before we get started. I want to make sure that this is as authentic as it can be, just like we're all going to be working on as we are working on our distance learning. So I am Laura Schreiber. I actually grew up in New England, in Connecticut, and then I went to school at Wheaton College in Massachusetts. From there, I grew my passion in cross-cultural learning, and I studied abroad in Denmark, and then I actually earned a Fulbright and taught in Taiwan for a full year, where I developed curriculum and worked with grades 1 through 6, building their English capacity. And from there, I moved to Washington, D.C., where I actually met my husband in Taiwan. You can see him there. And we moved to D.C. I worked in Fairfax County, Virginia for around 10 years, teaching grades 4 through 6 as a classroom teacher. Within that time period, I moved to China, and I worked with a company, an education company, once again, building English capacity and setting students up for studying abroad. And I actually also taught in the Dominican Republic and other areas. So I really do have a passion for English learning, but also just cross-cultural understanding and education. I moved back to Virginia, where I got my master's at the University of Virginia, and I got my ESOL accreditation. And from there, I moved to Baltimore, which is where my husband is from. And I currently teach at a elementary school called Padonia International Elementary. And we have a staff or students of around 500 students, 200 of which are ESOL learners. And that's grades K through 5. So we have a big job where we are working with our ESOL students and trying to reach all their needs. So, you know, every day is a challenge, and working with teachers and working as collaborative members of grade level teams. And the fact that we're now doing this remotely is definitely something that we're all working on. I want you guys to know I'm in the same boat as you are. And actually just this morning, I added a few slides to this presentation because every day there's more and more for us to utilize and access. So just know I'm with you, and I'm here just to share what I've learned, and hopefully you can share with me as well. So today our goal is to learn tools and strategies to support our English learners and their families in order to access this virtual learning. It is a big job, and I am not here to say I know all the answers, but it's a place to start. And I want to have that conversation with you as well. Please know that there is a Padlet. I'm going to follow it right now. And I'm going to go back just so you can see that URL. Oops. It's tinyurl.com/ELScan, and it is capitalization specific, so small s. And on this URL, you will find all of the resources that I mentioned. I have linked, and I tried to organize it in a certain way so that you could follow along with the way that I organized this presentation, so you can access that remotely. And I actually have it set up so that it's a constantly moving Padlet. So if you want to add to it, please feel free, but also please try not to delete anything. I know that can happen accidentally with all of these online resources. So I am modeling the use of Padlet today. That is just one way we can organize our learning and our instruction with our students. You can use it in so many different ways. On the right here, I do have New Hampshire specific resources, and it has to do with your translator services. Since I am not an expert in New Hampshire public schools, that's something that Karen has been helping me with. So please feel free to add anything New Hampshire specific. Okay, I'm going to go back to this. And please, thank you for being patient with me, as this is kind of one of my first times trying to process all of this as well. So the agenda today, I organized it with focusing on 3 big questions that I know a lot of people have right now in education in general. And I know a lot of it has been focused around how are we going to meet the needs of our special education students? And one thing that I'm not seeing a lot of is how can we meet the needs of our EL students? Because that is a layer that's really important. So we're going to be covering 3 big questions. And before diving into the strategies, I'm going to give just a brief overview of 2 different types of cyber learning. Then I will go into the 4 strategies and tools for online instruction with EL learners. And we'll talk about some final ideas, and then I will welcome any questions and hope to provide some answers. So one of the #1 questions that I'm getting and that I'm seeing online is, what if my students don't have access to electronic devices or the internet? What I'm seeing is the big issue right now is equity, right? how can we have these expectations of online learning when our students are coming from all different backgrounds? Maybe have phone access, maybe don't have phone access, maybe don't even have money for internet access. So one thing I'm going to say to you is really think about the differences in devices. Most families do have access to a phone. I know that my students, I may say to them, do you have a digital device at home? And they say, well, I use my mom's phone. So maybe think of using email as a way to reach out and push out some of your lessons. And a big way to think about this is using text. And all around the world, if you travel abroad, WhatsApp is a great way that people really communicate. So WhatsApp is a free messaging service. So maybe ask your students, do you use WhatsApp instead of texting? Because texting maybe is a charge for their family. So this is a big time where we have to be really creative. An amazing resource, and I have this linked, is Talking Points. Now, this is a service that is free, and it allows you to link a mobile number to a mobile number of a family member, one of your students' family members, or a phone. And it allows, it's a third party that translates. So if your family speaks Spanish, or if it speaks Hindu, it actually takes your text, translates it, and then connects it to your parent. And then the parent does it back to you. So if you have updates, if you even want to be texting with your student per se. Now, once again, I'm going to go in a minute and talk about making sure you know the appropriate rules based on your district. So keep that in mind. But Talking Points is an amazing resource that I'm going to talk about a little more. Internet access is what we're talking a lot about lately. I did provide in the Padlet, there are a lot of temporary free internet options, Spectrum, Comcast. So please check that out. And I think we really have to advocate for our families, and don't feel like you're alone in this. Reach out to if you have an EL teacher in your building, if you have an administrator or a family liaison, please don't feel like you're alone. I think that's one of the big messages we need to spread to all our teachers and find a way to build a community. This is a great opportunity to do that. Now, the third option is to provide those hard copies of resources. Now, I will admit, this is probably the last, this is the one you really don't want to have to do, but for some families, you probably will just have to do this. It's a reality. I had 3 newcomers that arrived right before this happened from Afghanistan. They're refugees. They have no English. So, they're already trying to navigate so many cultural norms, and now they have to navigate a switch from in-person school to online. So one thing I can do is to provide hard copies. So I'm going to follow a link here. This is just one resource. I'm thinking more about newcomers here. There are so many different languages here. It is amazing. 15 different languages. If I went into Spanish, for example, it provides a 4-week it doesn't require any technology, and it breaks it up one thing a week. And this is really for our newcomers or our level 1 learners, providing them with activities at home that they can do. And once again, like I said, there are a lot of different languages here that you can access. And just so you can see the English version, it's finding ways to be creative, watching a TV show, having them list titles, characters, setting, beginning, middle, and end. So these are just some things we can do in order to provide something that works for our families and for our students.
Laura, real quick, that site was called what?
So
where you just were?
Yes, this is ESLA at home. Oh, ESL at home.edu blogs. And once again, this is linked if you go to the Padlet under, I believe, learning resources. It's right here, hard copies of EL activities. It's right here. So that's just one resource, and you can also explore this website. It's pretty cool. So that's just one idea. So the second question is, how can I communicate with my students and families who don't speak English? The first thing I'm going to say is, if they have access to the internet, online platforms, and we're going to dive into that in a minute. But for those that don't have the access to the online platforms, that's where phone calls and text will really come into play. really reaching out. And this is something that we really haven't had to do in a long time, or have had to do. One of these ideas that I've found is to create, instead of using your phone number, which I know can be uncomfortable, make sure to create a Google Voice number. I have provided instructions on how to do that on the Padlet. With this Google Voice number, you can use Google Voice to link to your families without giving away your number. And then this idea of just providing consistent communication, even if it's once a week, using maybe what I was talking about, talking points, maybe once a week, reaching out to those families that don't speak English. That's consistent, just making sure you do it once a week. Another idea is phone translation. I know our county uses Language Line, which is a third-party translation service. Another one is TransPerfect. Karen, I know we provided on the Padlet some New Hampshire specific translation resources, but were you able to find out if New Hampshire specifically uses different translation services, or is it just person to person or district to district? We may have to see later. Another idea I had was to make sure you're providing.
Laura,
yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Language Line is definitely one of the ones they use.
Oh, great.
So that's great. And I also attached at the bottom, there's in your control panel, there's a place for handouts. So
yes.
I actually just created a little document for you, and there's more around New Hampshire and translation services there.
Great.
And I'll also upload that to the folder that all of you will get a link to.
And I'm showing you right now, the translation services document is right here, as well as the translator list. So, So I did provide that here as well. I just didn't really have the time to dive into that too much, because as I said, things are changing so quickly and we're getting more and more information all the time. Let me put this back on present 1 second. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is the importance of providing, is this presenting? Sorry, 1 second. Is providing translations about school and community policies. One thing I am going to show you in a second, if it doesn't freeze, is an amazing resource in the EL world of ESOL teaching. Coloring Colorado is an amazing resource, and they provide so much research and resources and articles that are all focused on English language learners. So if I follow this link, they provide translations about the coronavirus, what's happening in schools. So that is something you can push out to your families. One idea, and this was something I read recently, is instead of sending PDFs to families who maybe have access issues, change it into a plain text option, because that requires less data to download. So these are the little tweaks we have to make when we're dealing with equity and finding ways to reach out to our families. So when I follow this link, coronavirus multilingual resources, what's amazing about this, oh, my internet is freezing. Let's hope that, I'm not going to scroll down. It's not letting me right now, but below oh, here we go. Right here, fact sheet in English, Chinese, and Spanish. Now, unfortunately, there are only 3 languages. However, it's a start, right? But if there's a resource, fact sheet, posters. So this is just one idea of spreading consistent information across to all of our families. I talk about using Google Translate, Microsoft Translate, and Microsoft Immersive Reader. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but there is a link on the Padlet. Microsoft Immersive Reader is one example of taking a text that you may be providing to your students, and it actually allows your students to play it back to them. It allows them to translate it into many different languages. There's a ton of options. So this is a way for a lot of our learners to self-pace some of the information you're sending to them. If it is a PDF, if it is a Word document, they can put it right into the Microsoft Immersive Reader. And like I said, there is, I'll bring it over here, communicating with students and families Let's find it. I put a lot. Here we go. Microsoft Immersive Reader. It brings you up, it shows you how to do it so that you can use that tool with your students who speak different languages.
Laura?
Yes.
Is this a good time to stop and ask some questions?
Please.
So one of the questions that was written in is some teachers are having a hard time getting their students and families to the online platform. So once they're there, right, it hasn't been so much of a problem. But I think if I'm inferring from this that actually getting into contact with them has been challenging. Do you have any creative solutions?
So actually, like getting to speak with them on the phone has been difficult. Is that what we're saying? Or is it, I'm wondering if that's the question, or if it's how, once they're on, how to communicate, how to access the actual platform. Is that what we're asking?
Connecting with them. It's having a hard time remotely connecting. So
yes. Okay. And that is something that we're also dealing with. I would say just honestly, I think if you're having a hard time, maybe calling what I've had to do in the past is look up in our school basically database and find as many phone numbers as I can for the families and try it as many times as I can until I can get through. Finding if they have an email, maybe even reaching out to someone in the community that they may know. Have you talked to so-and-so? I think just utilizing the community aspect of this and trying to find a way to reach those students. Another idea is if there is one specific student that's having a difficult time accessing the online platforms, they have the device, they have internet, but they're just having a hard time accessing. One idea is to have like a buddy, a tech buddy, that could either be in person depending on family dynamics or community dynamics, but also maybe even doing it remotely, having a tech buddy through Google Chat or Zoom or whatever it is that you may use to do that. But I think it's a really difficult, it's a difficult issue, and I wish I had a good answer, but I think just consistent once a day, if it has to be, just trying to reach out to those families. If they're not answering, try texting. That's a big one too, because it may be that they're not secure in their language abilities, that they don't want to answer the phone, or they're scared to answer the phone due to immigration issues. So maybe just reaching out via text. That's another idea. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I think that
it's a hard one. For now, this is an ongoing issue. And another thing is providing student-friendly and family-friendly instructions on how to access these online platforms. And I'm going to show you in a second some examples of that. But I will say, if you go online right now and you type in how-to instructions for Google Voice, for example, there is so much being created right now for teachers. And that's one of the amazing things, is there are so many resources out there. So try that as well. And I'll show you some of the ones I've found.
Laura, have you used Remind?
Yes, that's something that I have as well in here, communicating with families. Up here, Class Dojo is one way to communicate with families. Remind is another one. And
how to set up Remind? Someone has asked, how do you set up Remind to text with families?
How do you set it up? So I believe, I'm going to link to it right now. Once you sign up, I believe all you need is either an email or a phone number, and you will then have it in your app, so you can just send out messages in that way. I personally haven't used it, but I'm working with a teacher in 5th grade that uses it almost all the time, and I see how easy it is for her. So I know once you follow the directions and how to set it up, it is super easy and free, which is very important. The problem there is I don't believe it translates. So that's where you may have to be a little creative and instead use talking points for maybe those 2 students or 3 students, or if it's 10 in your classroom. I hope that answers that as well.
All right. Yep.
You're learning that there's not one size fits all answer, unfortunately. So we really thank you for asking these questions. Remind evidently does translate, by the way. Oh, yes. Awesome.
Gotten
Thank you for,
super.
see, I'm learning. You taught me something. Awesome. I wonder how many languages it translates into. That's something we can learn as well.
Someone will be able to answer that, I am
Yeah,
sure.
maybe someone can. See, we're a community. Thank you so much.
A bunch.
One thing that I pulled this quote that really thinking about our communities of EL learners and think about the strengths that these families have going into this crisis. And especially, I know in my setting, a lot of these families are in this amazing built-in network, and a network that I actually don't even necessarily have within my community. And so they have so much coming into this that we don't even know about. And I know I have a friend that's from the Dominican, and he's like, this is nothing. This is something, like, I've slept on floors and I went through the malaria crisis. So I know how to handle this. So think about it in that sense, that we need to respect the knowledge and their ability to problem solve as well. I think language is a barrier, but it's not a deficit. And I think that's something that I'm truly passionate about, is thinking of this as just one barrier that we need to find a way to jump over. The other thing I'm going to say is keep in mind also the fact that a lot of these families are losing their jobs right now. And a lot of our students, especially the intermediate students, a lot of my students that I'm thinking about right now are in charge of daycare. They're in charge of making sure their little siblings are getting care. So this idea of expecting them to be online at 9 a.m. may not be plausible for them. So I think this idea of being flexible with students is very important. Finding ways, and we're going to dive into this right now, about finding ways to record and be asynchronous about our online teaching so that they can access it at their ability, so whenever they can, and maybe just having high expectations, but also being flexible with those. I think that's really important. Let me try to get this back to my view. Were there any other questions that I can answer right now before I do my last question? Or are we good?
We're good.
Great. Okay, so the third big question is, how do I share all this information and content with my students? And before I dive into that, I want to just plug that we really should look into our technology and acceptable use policy when we're thinking about all the resources we have at our fingertips. Think about equity. If we're using a platform that requires an email, think about it in the sense that some families don't even have an email address. So that's an issue of equity. So maybe looking into your school's policy, copyright laws, and maybe appropriate use of social media. Some schools love Twitter and some districts love Twitter, but maybe some districts also find that to be not acceptable for their school. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about all of this. And the last thing I'll say too is to think about when you are sharing content, please reach out to your school administration, IT specialist, ESOL teachers. We're here to work with you. You are not alone. So asking questions and finding answers. So the second part is just an overview of 2 types of cyber learning. And a lot of you may already know this, but just so we're on the same page. So there is a woman, Dr. Jeannie Krimmel, who teaches ESOL in Pennsylvania, and she's done amazing research on 2 types of cyber learning and the advantages and disadvantages for ELs. So there's synchronous cyber learning, which is real-time virtual interaction. That's what we're doing right now. And then there's the asynchronous. We're actually prepping for that as well because this is being recorded. So this has the potential to be asynchronous, where you can come back to this once it's posted, and self-paced, you can come back, stop, repeat. So both of those have advantages and disadvantages for ELs. A synchronous platform really does focus on those oral language skills of students. Now, just remember, there are 4 language domains that we're working on with our ELs: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So really focusing on oral language, building social cues, modeling, interacting with peers, and figuring out the negotiated meaning in language. This is providing those opportunities. And then the student-to-student, student-to-teacher interaction. However, the synchronous cyber learning can have some disadvantages. The pace can be really fast for some students, and too fast. It doesn't give them the process time. Also, what I was talking about before is scheduling. If you say 9 a.m., we're always having our mini lesson, that may be difficult for some students. So not only can they attend, maybe can't attend, but also it could be confusing in the communication of when it is and whatnot. So that's something to keep in mind. Asynchronous really does focus on this literacy development. So the ability to stop, rewind, if it's also a text, developing those literacy skills, allowing the time to process, also time to translate. So encouraging your students to use Google Translate, other translating resources for them to do that along with your asynchronous or your video lesson. And especially with the audio, their listening skills can really be developed if you provide the asynchronous model. And it also allows more student to teacher interaction, so you can touch base with them on the side, asking them about their comprehension. What are some things they may need to be reminded or retaught? The disadvantage of the asynchronous is they are losing that natural, authentic, social environment. So there is a loss of social cues, and they are kind of missing that negotiated meaning where they're trying to negotiate what is the true meaning of that sentence. So something to think about. Dr. Krimmel went on to, this is just like a little image that I liked showing the difference between synchronous and asynchronous. If you're confused about the two, and giving you some ideas of, synchronous may be small groups, book clubs, research clubs, whereas asynchronous could be a read aloud, shared writing, things that they can go and self-pace. And this big word, flexibility. In my mind, flexibility is like my mantra right now as we're diving into this new world of education, is flexibility. So she goes on, Dr. Krimmel goes on to think about, okay, how are we balancing synchronous and asynchronous instruction for our students? Now, the language domains, reading, writing, speaking, and listening, there's an acronym SWIRL, which I really like: speaking, writing, reading, and listening. For our beginning language learners, asynchronous, which is where they're allowed to stop and go back, that would be a model that would be more beneficial for our beginning language learners because they require a lot more support. Whereas the synchronous is one that maybe they need a little bit less of. That's something to keep in mind. Intermediate students, they need like a balance where they could do 50-50, where they're accessing both. Whereas the advanced, they could handle more of the synchronous in-time social reaction of our instruction. And I just really love this image that helps us think about what our students need based on their language acquisition. Oh, but I will state balance is key. It's not either or, and I really don't want this to stress you out. I think something to keep in mind is just to do your best. Don't do all synchronous. Maybe once a week, try to add in one different modality. So be easy on yourself and just use this as a guide. So what I'm going to dive into now are the strategies and tools for online instruction. I am going to list a lot of resources. Keep in mind, they're on the Padlet, so I'm not going to dive into all of them. So if we go into our first strategy, with our ELs, and I want to say that all of these strategies you can take and plop into a real life classroom. All of these strategies, I believe, are good teaching. So it's really just a mindset shift of now bringing it to our online platform. So just like modeling is great instruction, we need to model online as well. Don't forget that setting clear expectations can be done virtually. So create online class expectations and provide samples. This is so important. Provide samples of acceptable responses. Maybe even one of your first lessons is diving into ask the question, what is an acceptable response? And have students create that along with you. That's more powerful than just saying this is acceptable or this is not. So maybe think about that. And this is where, if you're doing asynchronous, this allows those idea of building acceptable responses. That really does allow a lot of our beginning to intermediate students. It allows students more time to practice, edit before submitting. So that's something to think about. Setting clear expectations, really providing those visuals and those how-tos to access a website. I know that's something we think is so natural for students, but maybe it's not. So that's something to think about. And then another thing that's really important, and this is important in all areas of education, is providing sentence starters and accountable talk starters. There's an amazing resource I just linked to from iowacore.gov. Once again, this is on the Padlet. These are student conversation starters. This is a great way. I love this. Accountable talk, simply stated, it kind of defines what it is, but then it also goes into conversation prompts, agree, disagree conversation prompts. And this is something that you can look at and say, okay, today, while you're planning, I'm gonna just focus on one prompt, provide that in your online platform to get students to interact. Just providing the sentence starter gives your ELs a lot more confidence. It gives them a starting point. So that's one resource. Let me see, I'm losing my other. And then when I talked about the visuals of how to access a website, this is one of the ones I added this morning because I just thought it was so amazing. There's a resource and a website that gives student tips and visuals on how to access certain parts of online learning. So this is just one example, and I linked to this as well. But let's say student tips for successful video calls. And it gives you 8 different success criterias, right? Staying engaged. I love the icons, the images, helping students access that. The best part is they then have it in Spanish, and they also have it in French and Japanese. I'm not sure if that's one of the languages you need. But so finding ways to make it visually concrete for students, and knowing like these are the expectations, and then you can go back and say, are we following those expectations? So my second strategy, and this is one of my core strategies in my teaching life, is the importance of building relationships. I think virtual learning is a great opportunity to focus on building relationships. Remember, our students are coming to us with a baggage of needs and wants, and we need to find those out still, and don't let the virtual aspect of it hold you back from that. Some of my 5th grade teachers that I'm working with, they've been doing morning meeting every day with a question of the day. We are so lucky that we have Padlet, Flipgrid, Wakelet, Nearpod. Once again, these are all linked on the Padlet. And it shows different ways that we can incorporate questions of the day, make it interactive. And it also provides students with multiple opportunities to interact student to student, or maybe it's teacher to student, or maybe you want to do a group discussion board. This is something that is possible with a lot of these platforms. Zoom, Google Hangout. Oops, let me go back. I'm just going to play 1 minute of the Flipgrid introduction, because I think it's really powerful at the power that these platforms provide teachers and students.
Laura, we can't hear the audio.
Okay, 1 second. I wonder why.
Lauren, are you using headphones?
I am not.
Okay.
Well, it's here. What I could do, I mean, I could still play it just to kind of show, it's only a minute, just to kind of show the visual aspect of how Flipgrid is being used. And I can kind of talk through it. Would that be okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. The other thing I'm thinking about is doing, I'm doing this.
Closed caption.
Captions, another strategy. So that was just really powerful for me to hear that these different platforms can really be an amazing, powerful tool for students, and this idea of relationship building. And what I love about Flipgrid is you can allow students to record and send just to you, or it can be something that every student sees. So as a teacher, you can really change and decipher how those recordings are going to be used for your students to showcase their responses. So that's just one platform. Another one, and I just really love this image, from Wakelet. It's another tool similar to Padlet, where you can use it to, and it gives you 6 different ideas. You can have teacher curated.
Whoops. Hey, Laura, your voice just went out.
Like I said before, differentiated learning, or using it as a way to communicate and using it as a school newsletter.
Laura?
Yes.
You went out for a second. So can you
sorry.
sort of go back to the Wakelet and
Yes.
repeat what you just said?
Okay, so what I was saying is the power that all of these platforms have. You can differentiate the use of them. There's not just a one way of using it. And this just provides 6 different ways that you could use it with your ELs. One thing I was thinking is number 5 for differentiating, having 3 different Wakelets or 3 different Padlets. It sounds hard, but it's actually, and I used it this past week. It's actually just a great way for you to organize what you have for students, and it allows them to access it based on their needs. So that's just one idea, the power that these tools have.
Is there
and once again,
sorry,
yes.
you go.
No, go ahead.
Is there a major difference between Wakelet and Padlet?
I'm way more familiar with Padlet, and to be honest, after looking into this, I'm going to be using Wakelet next. I'm not quite sure exactly the difference, but I do know, like, visually it may be a bit different, but the idea of a way to organize and access that material is the same, if that makes sense. Just maybe the way in which the tools are used may be a little different.
Thanks.
I say just try one and see how it goes. That's going to be my plan, is to use Wakelet next. Strategy 3 is using these EL-friendly lesson creation platforms. Zoom is one that I know we all have access to right now. What's amazing about live streaming Zoom is you can actually, and I'll follow this link, it shows you how to do it. If you record yourself giving a mini lesson for your students, it will actually allow you to transcribe for your students, so they can have the transcription and they can actually watch it, pause it, self-pace, and then use that transcription to help them access what you're teaching. So this is an amazing tool. What's amazing, and as I'm looking into this, there are other ones that do this as well. So using Google Classroom, Google Hangout, Screencastify. One thing, and it's gonna be on the next slide, is oops, where is it? Right here. Work smarter, not harder, making transcripts using speech to text features. So Google Docs, if you open a Google Doc while you're presenting something on, let's say, even Zoom, or if it's Google Voice, it actually, if you put the speech to text feature, if you click that, it will transcribe while you are giving your presentation or whatever it may be. So then students can then access that Google Doc, transcribe it or translate it for themselves, or you could even put that into Google Translate and translate it for them. So there are so many little tricks that we're learning that can help your students access this material. So interactive, I believe truly that if it's interactive, students feel it's a little bit more authentic and they can access it even more. And once again, these are the ones we've talked about: Padlet, Flipgrid, Wakelet, Nearpod, Kahoot. We all know Kahoot, but that's a great way just to get students to interact, make it fun. And this is an image that I have linked into our Padlet. A woman, Caitlin Tucker, talks about how we can use video conferencing in our lessons. There are different ideas. We could use it as small group instruction, small group, I don't know if I said instruction or discussion, but both, and then conferencing with students. So there's another image she provided that talks about these 5 different ways to design your instruction. Hooking the group: I do, we do, you do, assign, check, and review, pause, present, pause, discuss, and then the quick assessment and focused instruction. 5 different ways. Once again, I'm not trying to overwhelm you. Maybe pick one to focus on for a week and think about what would be great for your ELs. So this idea of like, I do, we do, you do, the gradual release model, trying to do that for your students time and again. And then accessing, it's all layering. So you're layering different modalities. And then I shared with you, work smarter, not harder. And this is just one of those tweets from a woman who kind of came up with that idea that seems so obvious and amazing. So then strategy 4, this is the meat and potatoes, right? It's okay, well, what is the meaningful content? And these are just some ideas. There's so much out there. One that we talked about and I'm using right now with my kids is Reading A to Z and Raz Kids. There's free subscriptions right now. I know Karen can talk a little bit more because she actually spoke with someone from Reading A to Z, but this provides with on-level independent reading. And this is something that I think we should all be accessing for our students. It's cross-content. There's so much there for your students.
And it's provided in Spanish as well.
And it's provided in Spanish. I forgot to mention that. So I know for my students, before they left 2 weeks ago, I dug into my resources and I tried to give them bilingual. So like I gave them a copy for their reading level of an English text and then that partner text in Spanish. So they have both. That's something to think about. Brain Pop ELL, I'm just gonna bring this up. For students who are newcomers or level 1 or 2, this is an awesome resource. And they take a placement test, and then based on where they come out, they follow the level once they sign in, and it helps develop that language. It's for the separate content. So it's not content related. This is for their language development. So this is where the ESOL teacher may step in and help provide some more access to language. Let me bring this back up. Then Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab. This is an amazing resource. This has been around for years, and it really just focuses it on differentiated beginning, intermediate, and advanced listening opportunities for students. And it actually even provides little quizzes at the end. So you can assign for your ELs on the side, maybe as a part of your ELA instruction, to maybe push out one of the listening activities for them. Voice of America, similar. It does differentiate, and there are all these different links for students and amazing content-rich topics as well. Here are some more ideas: EL Civics, News ELA, and Common Lit. You can separate based on Lexile level. And actually, one of my friends from college started Common Lit, and there's so much in there. You can translate it into Spanish for Common Lit. There are Spanish access there. And then content specific, I'm obsessed with Docs Teach. It's from National Archives. And this is something, providing images just speaks volumes for our students. And what's amazing about Docs Teach is they have activities right there for you that have already been planned. So if you're teaching about, let's say, Civil War and Reconstruction, it provides primary documents where students can interact, see, think, wonder, any type of visual learning strategy. If you're doing Civil War, or you can search by content, so whatever unit you're doing, just providing those visuals can be so powerful. And then academic vocabulary. This is just one website, Learning Chocolate. It's on a Padlet, but it breaks down, and I have it here. Let's see, Learning Chocolate. It separates it into all different content levels, but also units. And this is a lot, it can be more for the primary, but also if we're talking about emotions or thinking about adjectives and things like that, you can separate it based on all those different content areas. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but just remember, it's on the Padlet. So when you are ready to look into this a little bit more, it's all there for you. So I threw a lot, and thank you for kind of going along for the ride with me. But my final thoughts, this image is really meaningful to me because I, as an EL teacher and educator, I'm here to help students access. And as a classroom teacher, you are not alone in doing this. So please reach out. I am a proponent of co-teaching. So if you do have an EL teacher who's willing to co-teach with you, think about this as just one planning document, but thinking about asking them, could you just focus on the language objectives for this lesson? Maybe having a weekly meeting using Zoom where you could say, okay, next week, we're gonna focus on the civil rights movement. Maybe asking someone to help find those resources, just so you're not alone. We're working on this together. And then this quote, remember I talked about flexibility. We will have to be flexible and understanding with our students and with ourselves. So be kind to yourself, and this is a journey, and we're on it together. And ask for help when you need it. And just know there are so many amazing tools out there to make learning really meaningful to our students. And I think the big fight is equity and trying to find ways to make all of these resources available to our students. So that's where I'm going to end right now. But if we have any questions, please ask. I will try to answer them or maybe put them down so that I can look into them a little bit more.
Hey, Laura, can you bring us back real quick to the Padlet address?
Absolutely. I'm going to go back to slide right here.
Okay.
So tinyurl.com/elscan.
Okay, I'm just gonna, also, can you talk a little bit about Kahoot?
Yes. Kahoot is, I'm going to bring it up actually. Kahoot.it. That's if you have a game pin. So let me get rid of that. So what you're going to do is you can search for content that was already created, and it provides a game pin for students. But, oh my gosh, slow. 1 second. So you can put any content. Let's say you're working on, let me see, adjectives, the difference between adjectives, nouns, and verbs. Sorry, it's being slow for me. Kahoot. Here we go. School. So it talks about how it works. It is like a game. So students are asked questions and they're able to sign into the game. They answer it, and then it shows, basically it's a competition to see who's getting them right. So sometimes for students who are very emotional about whether they're right or wrong can feel a little bit intimidated by this, but overall students are obsessed with this. I think I have to sign into it. And there's also more information about distance learning and how to use it. I think I will have to sign in to do it. Let's play. Yeah, so you need a game pin, and then it provides you with the application to answer the questions and play the game. It's just a fun way to review or assess different concepts. But keep in mind, for some of our ELs, that especially our newcomers, this may not be best if it's in a whole group setting. However, it could be good in a smaller group setting where maybe you have all your level 2 ESOL students together and they are all on the same level playing the game. That may be a different way to use it.
Can you talk more about how you've used Google Chat?
So Google Chat, it's just, honestly, it's just one other way in which students can interact with maybe a concept, maybe with a question or a review, or if it's a morning message or a morning question. It's just one other modality for students to interact. To be quite honest, I haven't used it too much because I haven't done a lot of solely virtual learning, but within the classroom, we've used it just to brainstorm or to review concepts. But if you go to one of the links here, let me go back. Where did I add that today? Here we go. One of the links that I put in here has some of your Google Chat how-tos or ways in which you can use Google Chat to best access your material. So there's a lot out there that can kind of answer those questions for you better than I can right now.
And quickly, do you know whether a child can use Kahoot not on a school account, but as an individual?
Oh, yep, it's for free. And what's awesome too, you can do it right on your cell phone. So it's just an app that you can have. If you have the pin, you can do it right there. The one thing is it has to be in time. Like you have to do it, if you want to do it as a class, you all have to be doing it around the same time, if that makes sense. I do believe if you have the pin, students could do it like on their own, but it isn't as competitive, if that makes sense.
So, but what if you're a kid and you want to set up with your friends outside?
Yeah,
of
you could absolutely, they could do that. They could absolutely do that.
I have a question about,
that could be an assessment. You can even say with your friends, create a Kahoot. That would be a great activity, actually.
Can you talk a little bit about what Nearpod is?
Yes. So Nearpod, and I'll go back because it's on the learning. So here we go. Nearpod, let's look. I'll go right into it. So once again, sign up for free. It allows you to, it's like it says, it merges the formative assessment with this idea of adding media, collaborative learning. Once again, it's similar to the Padlet, but if you're looking over here, it's more, the streamline of it is a bit different. The visual of it is a little bit different. And you can join using different codes. So the way to access it looks a little different than the Padlet. So all of these they have similar functions, but the visual and the design of it is a bit different, if that makes sense. There's just this visual right here of, it's more of like slides rather than if you look at Padlet, which is, you can do columns, or there are all these different ways to do Padlets as well that look different.
Okay. I'm gonna put a couple questions out to the whole group.
Please, yeah.
One of them is, I had a question earlier about providing emotional support and connection to families of EL students. And I would love to hear, if you're out there listening, if you want to raise your hand and maybe respond to that. I'm sure that folks in the audience that are listening have some ideas of things that they have used. So that's one question that I would love to hear everyone address, or anyone address. And then the other question I would love to have anyone address is, I have a phys ed teacher who's writing in and asking about connecting students while they're learning remotely. So again, you can raise your hand in the chat or in the control panel rather. And I'm going to look now to look for raised hands if anyone wants to contribute to that, to answering that. Both of those questions, that would be awesome.
Yes.
And in general now, this is the time, if you want to raise your hand, that I can unmute you and you can ask Laura questions directly. You can offer any information that you have that you think that folks would appreciate. Okay, we have a volunteer.
Yay.
Hi, Jill.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Thank you. This has been super helpful.
Oh my
I
gosh,
just
good to
I
hear.
just wanted to share something we've been doing with our ELLs. I'm an ELL tutor, and the
Awesome.
ELL teacher and I have been using Google Meet and Google Classroom. So we will post a Google Meet code on our classroom and say, we're available from 1 to 2 if you want to come on. And we've been
Beautiful.
getting a lot of kids connected that way, and then they can see each other also, which is super helpful because a
I
lot of
love
their families aren't letting them out of their houses right now. The other thing we found really helpful on Google Meet is that share screen or present mode. It allows the student to share their screen with us or us to share our screen with them. And we have gotten kids with very little English hooked into Google Classroom by a painful process of saying, no, move the cursor more to the right, look for the little person, and manage to do it that way. So that has been a godsend for us, that share screen function. So just, I've never used Google Meet before this week. Go to meet.google.com and just play around with it. It's been a lifesaver for us.
Thank you. I'm literally writing this all down because I'm learning with you. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Samantha, did you
Sorry.
want to add?
Sure. So I was going to answer the question about, you said a gym teacher had reached out about remote learning.
Yes.
So I teach ELLs in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I want to share what our gym teacher at our school has been doing. So a lot of our teachers are using Google Classroom right now to communicate with families and students. So our gym teacher went into the Google Classrooms that were shared with him at our school, and he made a topic on every Google Classroom page that said PE. So on the classes day that they would normally have gym, he goes under the topics page and he posts either like a workout video, or the other day I think he posted a video about how to make your own basketball hoop at home using different materials. So he posts videos. So if a class, say like a kindergarten class, usually has gym on Monday, then he'll post a video on their Google Classroom page on Monday with a workout or some sort of dance or something creative that they can do at home with materials that they already have.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else want to share before we bring the webinar to a close? I'm just looking through the raised hands. Okay, Samantha has shared and Jill has shared. Okay, well, it looks like there are no more raised hands. So I am going to bring the webinar to a close. Just want to make sure that, give it one more second. Laura, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
I just loved that. Was it Jill that talked about using Google Meet and using that share screen? I think using EL teachers providing those resource room hours, I loved that idea. So thank you guys so much for just being here. I think that's the first thing. I appreciate you listening, and I wish you all good luck and stay safe. And I just appreciate you giving me the time to share ideas and be collaborative with all of you. So thank you so much. And thank you, Karen, for helping me navigate all of this.
So actually, Carrie, just before we go, Carrie had a question or a comment.
Yeah,
Yes.
Hi there, Laura. I just want to thank you so much.
Hi,
I actually
Carrie.
work with ELLs. I used to work with the kids, now I work with the parents at a tech college.
Oh, awesome.
But I love your resources. I just had a quick question about creating the Padlets. That's such a
Yes.
lovely resource. I've not looked at this, but is that something once you create it, can people change it? Or could you just talk a little bit about using a Padlet versus like creating a Google website? It looks like a really great way to put resources out there.
It is so awesome. I've used it in a lot of PDs as well. So like just thinking of transferring this to students. So providing a question or a research topic, and students can you decide which format to use, whether it's like a wall where students can move the different images or resources, they can attach videos, they can attach just chat paragraphs, or they can provide links. So it's just a very great visual way to organize information. And like you said, like your question asked, can people change it? Yes. So you can lock it. That's something Karen and I were talking about yesterday, actually. So you can either lock it, so presenting all the information, or it can be a formative, have students in real time change and create their own creation. So yeah, it's a great tool.
Okay, so students could actually create their own Padlets
Yes.
and then share them. And I imagine it's,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, please, your turn.
No, I just wonder, so we use like something called Blackboard to, communicate with the
Yes.
students.
Mhm.
So I imagine you could like link, hyperlink a Padlet and lock it. So like, here's a bunch of resources I found for you
Yes.
guys, for adult learners. Okay.
Oh yes, so that's I have our school uses Schoology, which is very similar to Blackboard. So you just push out the Padlet, and then in whatever way you want to use it, if it's here are resources or work in groups to create your own Padlet, you can use it and push it out through Blackboard.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really
All right,
great.
that sounds good. And then just my other one, you just mentioned a little bit. What was that one called? Flipgrid, I
Flipgrid.
think, where you make the videos. I don't know
Yes.
if you have any more to share on that.
What's great about the Flipgrid, well, I know you're working more with adult learners, but Flipgrid really just allows, it's more of the video access. So like right here, there are different responses and you ask them to interact if it's a book talk or if it's, it depends on the need of it, but they can record themselves and you can either say you're sending it right to me and no one else sees it, or it can be we're sending it out as a group discussion. So you can then say, I want you to listen to 2 out of the 10 responses and comment or something like that. So it's just a different way to get kids or students to interact with your instruction or concepts.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this, you guys.
Thank you, and thank you for the question.
You
Thanks,
bet.
Karen. Okay. I think that brings us to a close.
Yes.
So Laura, thank you again. All right. I'm getting so many
Awesome.
nice comments here. Hugely helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
And the last thing I will show is, let me just get there to the last slide. I am here. So here is my email, or you can text me. And then there's Karen's email if you have any further questions or anything. Even if you want to give me some good ideas, I'm here and just am eager to reach out to you. So thank you guys so much.
Laura, thank you. I learned a lot too.
Thank you. Oh,
All
great.
right, everyone. Go forth into your day and have a good one.
Yes. Enjoy.
Take good care.
Thank you so much.